Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, I'm joined by Captain Chris Siess, owner of Not the Real World. Chris guides for everything with fins from Central Virginia to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Please join us as Chris shares his fishing journey. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a review and rating in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And a quick announcement. Our friend Blaine Chocolate has launched a new online tying class. He'll be teaching folks how to tie one of his new patterns, the GC Helgramite. You won't find this pattern in any book or magazine article. The class will be held live on February 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern, and all the details are in the show notes. Space is limited, so don't delay. Now, on to our interview. Well, Chris, welcome to The Articulate Fly.
Thanks so much, Marvin. I'm super happy to be here. Really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and we have a tradition on The Articulate Fly. We always ask all of our guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
Well, I'm going to have to say it's a large collection of them from growing up on my best friend's farm, basically, up in Northern Virginia, and fishing in those farm ponds for bass and bluegill over the years as kids, which we did probably every day or every other day of the summer growing up would be my earliest fishing memories.
Yeah, very neat. When did you get drawn to the dark side of fly fishing?
That would be around age 9 or 10, I think, is what my mother tells me. She was the one that first got me a fly fishing lesson, which was right around when A River Runs Through It came out. I think that was in 93, 94, 95, something like that, which would put it right in that time frame of 9 or 10. I thought it was a little later than that, but she insists I was age like 9. And got me a lesson, and with a gentleman named Hank Woolman up in Northern Virginia who has since passed away. He only had one hand and was teaching fly fishing. It was pretty interesting, but learned from him and got addicted, and it's pretty much ruined my life since then.
Yeah, there you go. So, you've I've known you in the industry for a long time. Who are some of the folks that have mentored you on your fly fishing journey, and what do they teach you?
Well, I guess Mr. Woolman was the one that got me started. I would probably say the earliest person to mentor me was actually a guy who was one of my middle school teachers named Tom Thomas. And he's a really big fly fisherman, lives out on the Chesapeake Bay, and just was always there answering questions I had of it. I think he could tell I was probably really addicted to it. Got me into tying flies. He did some summer camps at the middle school and high school I ended up going to. And I really enjoyed going to those, and it just completely sucked me in. And I've kind of tied a bunch of different flies with him over the years. We still talk, almost weekly about different fishing reports in different areas and whatnot. But he's somebody that really, really just got me into it. Just from a different aspect of all the different types of fishing and all the basics and how cool fly tying is, because he is one heck of a good fly tyer.
Yeah, interesting. So did your fly tying addiction come pretty quickly after you started fly fishing, or did it take a while?
No, it was all the same, all the same time frame. I don't know why I ended up getting a fly tying vice, but I did. Right around when I started learning to tie, learning to fly fish, excuse me. And I think it was just my parents were probably like, hey, like if you're fly fishing, you ought to try tying your own flies too. And, I just started from there, basically.
Yeah. What was your first vice?
Oh gosh. What are the names of those like wooden box ones? It's like a little like cheapo. It comes in a little like foldable wooden box. They're called like a Sunrise or something. They're not very high quality whatsoever, but that was my first vice. And I wore the jaws out of that thing to where it wouldn't hold hooks anymore. they would just fall out basically. So I really liked it quickly, or got into it quickly.
Yeah. Do you remember the first fly you tied on it?
That would be some type of a version of a border collie haired streamer, which I remember being a kid and pulling black and white hair off of the family border collie named Elmo and tying like really basic streamers on, an old eagle claw hook or something like that I used for catching bass and panfish. And for some reason, it sticks out in my mind that I used this bright red thread that my mother had for like sewing. And that's what I remember tying close to the very beginning. And I don't have those flies anymore. I kind of wish I did. I don't know where they would be. They're probably got tossed out at some point or another. I've got a lot of flies I tied from years and years ago that my grandmother actually saved. She gave to me 2 years ago in a big box, which is kind of cool. But those first ones are long gone, but they were tied out of border collie hair, which, mind you, I still do tie flies out of dog hair, whether it's clients or my own. I still do that, and it works very well.
Yeah, very neat. And I know you tie flies now professionally. I don't know that I would say you're a production tyer, because my impression is you tie kind of larger streamer flies mostly. But what was that transition from tying for yourself to tying for customers like?
I don't think it wasn't particularly difficult for me to do so. I remember my mother owns a small garden store in Northern Virginia, and I ended up selling flies when I was young, in my teens there, that people purchased. Now it's much more so like try and make this fly swim the best it possibly can, look as good as it possibly can, and try not to have any mistakes in it. Whereas if you look at my guide box or my personal box, it's like this thing should have feathers here and it doesn't, and this one should have hair here and it's torn up or ripped off or whatever it might be. Versus tying for someone that wants to pay you money, like you want it to look as good as possible. I've just kind of grown into it just over the years, just tying for so long. My tying skills have gotten better and better. I'm certainly nowhere near, not a production tyer, as you said. I like to tie streamers and a lot of redfish stuff. And I'm certainly not nearly as good as a lot of these other guys out there in terms of just making it look so perfect. But you don't really need it to look perfect. It just needs to look good. And half of that is, even attracting the client that wants to purchase it. If it looks good, they'll buy it, and if it swims right, they'll catch fish.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have any tips you can share with our listeners that you maybe have learned that kind of helped you up your game as you were kind of moving to tying for customers?
I would say, and this is kind of crazy in terms of, I heard somebody else was doing this. I don't remember where I heard this, but I heard that one guy was counting his wraps. Now, I don't count my wraps, but using less thread to make a slimmer profiled fly in the underbody or whatever part of the fly it might be, to just maximize the use of your wraps is important versus, running up a big, like, bulky head on it or something, making a smaller looking head on just a clouser, for instance, makes it look better. So there's a technique, particularly that I think I saw in what a Gunnar Brammer posted somewhere along the way a couple of years ago about how he latches down his bucktail to a hook using whatever thread he's using, and it's make 2 loose wraps, crank down, and then make 2 tight wraps that are essentially an X, and make 2 or 3 more tight wraps further up the shank from whatever that material is at the tie-in point. And that should lock it in pretty much anything. And if you can do that, you can save yourself a hassle of just cranking on, thread over and over and over again and then having that bucktail still slide out. So it's something that I can put up on a YouTube video, that exact technique. But if you can tie that and keep your thread wraps to a minimum, it'll make the fly look better overall and less bulky and just more streamlined.
Yeah, interesting. I guess the theory there, right, is what you really want to do is you want to apply pressure along the shank, not at one spot on the shank over and over again.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And it's just utilizing the specific pressure properly on that material, say bucktail, for instance, since that's such a common material, to just truly lock it in. Because if you just kind of mound up the thread on top of itself, it's just not going to lock it down. But yeah, you're right. Moving it up the shank, and you don't need a lot of thread wraps to do it if you do it correctly.
Yeah. Interesting. And, it's kind of funny because I guess it was, maybe it was last year at the Atlanta Fly Fishing Show, or maybe before you had started to get into the earring game. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks. Funny that you say that just because I got back from a women's clothing boutique here earlier this afternoon from tying earrings at it and selling a couple pairs for the Christmas season. But I guess it was about a year and a half ago, a buddy of mine's fiance came to me and said, "Hey, I have this feathered earring that I lost the other pair to it, or the other one of the pair. And do you think you could make one of these?" And I looked at it. It was literally like 3 pieces of, just hackle. And I was like, yeah, I could tie that on a fishing hook and put it on an earring loop and cut the hook off, and there you go. And I did it, and it looked like the other one, and she was happy about it. Then I thought, well, let me make a few more that look like flies or look like just the feathers hanging down. And she told me she paid a pretty hefty price for it, and that kind of caught my attention. And I made a couple more of them and gave them to her, and her family were like, her mom and her sister were like, "These are awesome." And then she gave a couple more to her friends. And then suddenly I had a couple females asking me to make them earrings, which was unexpected and a bit unusual. And then I just started doing it and started selling them here and there randomly to, friends of friends and whomever. Got them stuck in a store in Percival, Virginia, where they started selling, my aunt's store. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something here. Created an Instagram page and an actual business. And now I probably get as many earring orders as I do fly orders. And it's a little easier to tie. It's a little quicker process. The money is a little bit better. It's just something to add to the repertoire of different ways to make money for me here. And it's just kind of fun a different way of tying. Just fun to lay different feathers on top of each other to create a pattern, not that needs to do something in the water, but just to catch someone's attention for whatever female is wearing it and whether or not it matches her dress or jacket or whatever it was today. It's just totally different. The one woman today came up to me and said, "Yeah, could you tie one that matches this jacket?" And it was like this weird cheetah print brown thing. And I said, "Sure, let me see what I can come up with." And she was, all about it and paid me the money for them and wore them out of the store. So it's pretty cool. So it's just a goofy thing I've kind of fallen into and enjoyed doing.
Yeah, that's neat. And so, you started fishing at a pretty young age, got hooked on fly tying and fly fishing. When did you decide you wanted to be a fishing guide?
Oh, man. It was probably always in the back of my head ever since I was in my teens, because I remember being in like high school and, getting the question, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" And people would say, "Oh, you'll be a fishing guide." And I remember thinking, "No, I'm not going to be a fishing guide. That sounds corny. That sounds whatever. I'm going to be a high level executive in some fancy office, makes a lot of money." I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And eventually I fell into thinking I was going to be in the journalism world, because I really liked sports and writing. And so it was always kind of there in the back of my head that people thought I might be a guide. And I thought maybe, but probably not. But I I guess I knew I was going to be a fishing guide when I got the first job being a fishing guide, interviewed for it. And that's when I, kind of knew that I was going to be one. What made me want to do it? Just me saying at that point, I think I should try and do this just to see if I can make any money at it, make something out of it, see if it's worth it or not. There wasn't any one pivotal moment other than the guy suggesting to me that I go interview for this open position, and I did and got it.
Yeah. And so was that, once you got that one position, have you been in the guide game ever since, or did you have to kind of work and grind on it a little bit to kind of break into the guide game?
I was immediately hired out in Colorado by Jared Hollinger at Aspen Outfitting Company. And I've technically been a guide ever since then, I guess. It's been something that's not necessarily been full time all the time. And I wouldn't know if I would still even call it full time. It's more like 3/4 time. But it's something that I've had to do, other things on the side. But yeah, I've been doing it for guiding for 12 years now, something like that. I think that was 2009 when I took that job. So, yeah, it was jump into it out in Colorado as a trout guide and been doing it ever since, kind of all over the place a little bit.
Yeah. How long did you stay out west?
I was out west off and on for parts of let's see here. I did 2 summer seasons guiding out there. And then there were several other winter seasons of me being a snowboard bum out there. But I guided 2 summer seasons out there for Jared and Aspen Outfitting Company on the Roaring Fork River in Aspen, Colorado. And then I came back east after that.
Got it. And who are some of the folks that have mentored you on your guide journey, and what have they taught you?
Oh, gosh. Well, I would have to probably start out with Jared and his father, John, who ran Aspen Outfitting Company. They showed the importance of high-end customer service, and the operation they have is as 5 stars you can get, or I guess as Jared has. His father passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. As Jared has out there, the high-end customer service is important, no matter, I think, what level of a guide. And by that, I mean, showing them a good time. And they're all about, because their clientele is super, super, super high-end out there, you really need to be on top of it. But they're all on top of all about making sure everybody's having a good time, showing up on time, going the extra mile, to make sure that you get a positive, feedback from your client. Have a good time. That might not be the best fishing day, but that's super important to be able to teach somebody to make sure they have a great time in the river, no matter what the conditions are, how many fish bite or whatever it is. I learned that from him. Some of the other guides out there as well were all about that. I mean, they're on his staff, so they're well versed in that. Mike Smith is another guy that's here in Virginia that has taught me a little bit about the industry. He's been in it for a long time, and he's been a great source of information. We've done some guiding together. I've worked for him for a couple spring seasons down on the New. But so he's always been super helpful to me. First person to help me turn me on to rowing a raft and drift boat. So I can now do that thanks to him. And he helped me teach me a lot about the upper New, which is an incredible spring smallmouth fishery. Whereas I knew a lot more about the lower New just from my time in college at Blacksburg. But he's somebody who's also certainly helped out a lot.
Yeah. And so you kind of, distill all that experience and mentoring down, what do you think's the secret to being a good guide?
Providing a great customer experience without a doubt has got to be number one. With that comes communication and teaching. If they're not having fun on the water, it's not good for anybody. You want them to have the best time possible, and they might want to catch 150 fish a day, and you need to have proper communication, explain, hey, this isn't like we're chucking worms at bluegills or anything like that. This is a little bit different, so it might be more difficult. And then with that comes the teaching aspect of it. On top of it is often I'm taking out beginners. I have a lot of folks who are beginners, particularly here in Richmond. And, they want to learn what's fly fishing all about. And if you can teach them something, you've made their day and made their customer experience a very positive one. And as I like to joke, I say that fly fishing has ruined my life, and it's my job to make it ruin other people's lives so that they might become as addicted as I am or really get into it or join the sport. And if I can help people do that, I think I'm doing a pretty good job as a guide, I would hope. Just this past couple weeks ago, a newer client from this past summer took him and his 12-year-old son out chasing redfish in shallow water in North Carolina and got his son his first red on fly. And you can tell the kid is just lit up, so excited. His dad's just super stoked. And now the kid's completely addicted. And I think that's important to show people your enthusiasm, to get them into it and teach them all you can.
Yeah, very neat. And one thing I always like to do when I have guides on the podcast is to ask them to share what they think the biggest misconception folks have about the life of a fishing guide.
Oh, it would definitely be that it's all fun and games and just fishing. If I meet somebody new and they ask what I do, I tell them I'm a fly fishing guide, and they go, "Well, that sounds really, really cool, man. Your life must be so hard, but whatever." And oh, you just take people fishing all day, and there is so much more to it, from the aspects of preparation, of knowing what's going on, of having all your gear ready, to preparing. Get the information of your client that you need, their experience level, what they're looking to do on the water. It's most of my trips are somewhere around 6 hours or so, and oftentimes it's going to be 10 hours overall the day, and from driving back and forth, working on the boat, cleaning up gear, whatnot. So it's not all just fun and games of just taking people fishing, because I'm not fishing and I refuse to fish with my clients unless they absolutely insist. It's a lot harder of a mental game than it's made out to be of just going fishing. You're trying to figure out what's going on if something's not working, or trying to teach the guy that just can't figure out to not bend his wrist. You're trying to find the different ways to get him to stop doing that so he can cast better, or things of that nature. So it's a lot tougher than just taking people fishing and thinking that life is a complete breeze. The hardest part of it is probably owning a boat and a trailer. If you were to ask my father, he is tired of hearing me call him to tell him that I'm stuck on the side of the road again with something breaking down, because that happens all the time. And that has got to be one of the more frustrating things of being a fishing guide is the trailer maintenance game. It's awful.
Yeah, it's funny too you say that, because it's one thing to have trailer problems out west, because generally where people fish out there out of drift boats, there's a fair amount of guide traffic, so you probably are going to be okay because you're going to have friends. But the guide concentration obviously in Central Virginia is not as high, and so the places you go, you could be on the side of the road for a pretty long time. Oh,
definitely. I've got it down to a science, essentially, of what I need to survive getting off the highway or the side of the road if something breaks down. I mean, I carry spares of everything. I have 2 toolboxes. I carry my own jack, because it's just happened so many times of wheel bearings is probably the biggest issue going out. And if you're like me and you're driving over 25,000 miles out of the year, and probably a third of that is towing my flats boat up and down the East Coast as far away as Florida or Louisiana, you're going to have breakdowns and that type of thing. So learning how to fix all that stuff yourself is super, super helpful. And yeah, you're right. It's sometimes you kind of feel kind of stuck and abandoned, like I've been abandoned overnight or felt abandoned overnight in a parking lot in Alabama till I get to the store the next day to buy the right part. So preparation is key in that. And it's eventually, if you own a boat with a trailer, something's probably going to go wrong with that trailer, and something's definitely going to go wrong with that boat at some point because they all just break down.
Yeah, there you go. And, it's interesting too, and we'll talk a little bit later on about kind of, where you guide and what you guide for in your guide season. But, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is you chase some pretty exotic stuff on the fly. I think you fish for snakehead and you fish for bowfin. Tell us a little bit about that and why there's such an attractive target on the fly.
Sure. Yeah. Those are probably fish that most people, if they've heard of them and heard of fishing for them, they probably haven't fished for them. I focus more on the bowfin, but there's a really good snakehead fishery in Virginia as well that I've caught several of them and gone for them numerous times, and actually be probably doing a lot more of that this upcoming year. Here, one of my new friends in Richmond is an absolute snakehead nut. It's all he likes to fish for. So we've been out a couple times, going to go some more. But the snakeheads are an invasive species from Asia, and they're essentially the Asian cousin of the bowfin, which is a native species to the U.S., and they are as old as dinosaurs. They are super, super old. They breathe air. They're so freaking tough. And they hit a fly incredibly hard. They will slam a fly. And they shake like if you get a dog riled up and he's holding on to one end of a rope and you're holding on to the other end, they're shaking their head really bad. That's how they fight. I would guess that out of 50% of them that my clients hook or I hook, my percentage might be a little bit higher, but half of them probably come off of the bowfin. They just have a super tough mouth. They're super tough fish, and they're so freaking cool. And they're not very well respected, particularly by the conventional bass guys, because they tear up their gear a lot. But it's just interesting to be able to catch a fish that's so so old. I mean, they're as old as dinosaurs are. The species is, and it's unusual. And the river that I guide for them here on in Richmond or north of Richmond, we're sight casting these fish up to 8 pounds, and it's a 20-foot cast. So it's exciting as hell to be up there on that river floating down in middle of the summer. The hotter it is, the better they bite. So they're fantastic. And the snakehead's just the invasive version of them that's been introduced probably 20, 25 years or so ago up in the Potomac, and they're making their way down through Virginia. And they act similar. They're a lot of similar water. They might be a little bit more picky, but they have absolutely voracious appetite as well. And they are reproducing like crazy. So guys can keep them. They taste delicious. The snakehead tastes a lot better than the bowfin, from what I understand. I've not eaten the bowfin, but I've eaten snakeheads, and they taste good. And so you can go fish for these fish in a typical like largemouth bass spot, and now catch a 30-inch snakehead or bowfin. And it's just another fishery that's kind of breaking open, because it's kind of an off the wall thing going for them, and we're lucky we've got it here in Virginia, kind of all throughout the state.
Yeah, neat. And so is it a topwater game or is it a streamer game?
Oh, it's whatever you want it to be. I have thrown frogs are a true snakehead delight. I've caught several snakehead on frog flies, Dahlberg divers, that type of thing. With the bowfin, I'm usually throwing more of a streamer. It's actually kind of like a big worm fly almost. A game changer would work exceptionally well for them. It just depends on how you want to fish for them. They will both hit a top water. They love things like spinner baits if you're going conventional fishing, or chatter baits, something with a blade on it. But anything that can move the water well, they will hit. And luckily, both of them provide a great opportunity for sight casting. So I've caught them both on streamers. I've caught them both on top water. They will knock a top water, a frog fly out of the water, both snakeheads and bowfin. And I've even sight casted bowfin with smaller crayfish flies. They're being particular picky. I've gotten them to eat some like a CK claudad. They'll eat those too. So they're not particular when it comes to food most of the time.
Yeah, very neat. And, one thing too, that as I was doing my research for the interview, really interesting. I mean, you guide basically fresh and salt, boat and wade from Central Virginia down to the North Carolina coast. And I was wondering if you could kind of share with our listeners a little bit about, starting up on the Rivanna and kind of working your way south, kind of, what you target, when you target it, and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I guess being here in Central Virginia, I am lucky enough that I've got a variety of opportunity from smallmouth to striped bass to the bowfin game, largemouth bass, catfish, gar, you name it. We've got a variety of things. So because a lot of my clients are beginners, I would say probably 50% or so, I offer a couple different wade fishing trips around Central Virginia within driving Charlottesville or Richmond, where you go wade fishing, where I can teach these folks how to do the whole, catching smaller sunfish and smaller smallmouth, largemouth, things of that nature in different ponds and lakes, and then like the Rivanna or the North Anna, which is kind of what I call my beginner trips. A little bit more experienced trips for folks that really want to go for the bigger, more aggressive stuff. We'll do the bowfin game, which is up on the Mattaponi River. Sometimes I also take folks to the Chickahominy Reservoir, which is about 40 minutes east of Richmond. It's actually the northernmost cypress swamp in North America. Super, super cool, weird fishery that doesn't seem like you should be in Virginia. And it's awesome having those bowfin and bass in there. And then, of course, about an hour and 15 minutes due east of me, I have the Chesapeake Bay, which is about where I run about half of my trips out of my flats boat. And we're chasing striped bass and redfish or red drum, depending on where you're from, you want to call them. Flounder occasionally, and speckled sea trout. It's mostly a striper or rockfish game, but this past summer, we had a great opportunity to catch a bunch of big sea trout and a good number of redfish. So that's a large chunk of my guide trips, along with the Mattaponi, and then I sprinkle in the beginners, a fair amount on those wade fishing trips. And then I do a lot of trips down in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, as well as several of them a year with a variety of clients, multiple clients, down around Cape Lookout, Morehead City area, where we go chasing anything and everything in the salt down there. So you're talking specks, you're talking red drum, you're talking flounder. I've got some spots that we can pretty much, if they are there, guarantee a flounder on the fly. That's pretty common if folks want to catch one, which surprises a lot of people, but they'll eat a chartreuse and white clouser pretty readily as long as they're there and you put in their face. Do the false albacore game in the fall. Do a lot of guide trips for that. I had a really busy season here this past fall for that, which lasted all the way through Thanksgiving. Big Spanish mackerel we can target sharks, can target the bull drum and the noose. I've done that. Take some folks out doing that. Do some docklight fishing down there. North Carolina's kind of got all of it right there in terms of the saltwater game, about 4.5 hours from Richmond. So it's fantastic. I spend an incredible amount of time down there. And a lot of my clients up in Virginia will go down there for a long weekend and fish me for 3 or 4 days. And I just absolutely love it down there and love all the fishing down there, particularly all the redfish. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've talked a few times and it seems like you've really gotten the redfish bug.
They're firmly implanted in me So much so that I'm debating getting a redfish tattoo, which would be maybe a questionable decision, maybe not. Who knows? But if there's one fish that I could just go chase, at a moment's notice, it's them. And if I've got a couple days off and the weather is looking good down at, Oregon Inlet or down at Moorhead or something where the tides are right at the right time of the day and the weather's looking good and the fishing's good, I mean, I'll just hop in my truck, tow the boat down, and either couch surf or sleep in my truck or camp or whatever it may be with wherever I'm at, whether or not I have a place to stay. I just do it for 2 days. I'll make that 8-9 hour round trip just to be able to go chase redfish because they're so much fun. And you can catch them from, Maryland all the way to Texas, all the way around the coast. And I've done a lot of fishing for them down in South Carolina and a bunch of trips down for them in Louisiana. And I've caught a few in Florida. There is no place like Louisiana for them, but it's especially in terms of sheer numbers and overall size. But North Carolina is super special to me. I've been going there my whole life for family vacations and started targeting them probably, 8 or 9 years ago out of kayaks with a fly rod. And what's beautiful about North Carolina is it's a lot of grass flats, and you can walk on them and you can go out in a kayak and it's easy access, and the fish can get big up to 35 inches. I've caught 35 inches on the flats. I've caught them as small as 10 inches. You have a lot of fish in the slot size on these flats, and it's gin clear water and you can see them swimming around. And, you just get a buggy looking crab fly in front of them. And I say that 60% of the time they'll eat it all the time. The other 40% is when they're starting to get weird or picky or something like that. You got to switch it up and figure out what they're going to eat. Getting it in front of them is a big part of the challenge in terms of figuring out where they're at, covering water, depending on whether you're wade fishing or if you're in a kayak or you're in a boat. They all present their own benefits and challenges, but it's an exceptional quarry that's fairly readily accessible to a lot of people. If you like to keep one here and there, they taste good, but they fight like hell. And watching them eat a shrimp fly or a crab fly that you're swimming in front of them in clear water in North Carolina on the grass flats is just fantastic. You'll watch them open their mouth and actually suck it in, and it's a 30-inch fish. And on your 708, and he's going to tow you around on the kayak. It's just, it raises the hackles on my arms just talking about it, thinking about it.
Very neat. Is it that visual hunt that really kind of sucks you into the redfish game?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And it's why I like fishing for them in North Carolina the most, I think. And I love the tailors that you get in Louisiana and Georgia and South Carolina. They've got strong tailing games. But the water is, much dirtier. And so it's harder to see those fish cruising around. You can in those areas as well. I'm not saying you can't. But middle of summer, it'll be the middle of June, July, August, and I can go to North Carolina and go sight cast to 25, 30 redfish on a good day and catch 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them as long as everything, works out pretty well. And it's just watching that visual eat where I can see that fish, 40 feet away. You don't ever really have to make a cast longer than 40 feet. And as long as you lead in by a little bit or you understand their body language, what's going on with the wind, the tide, any of that thing, any of that stuff, you'll get to watch them eat that fly, and it's just so freaking cool. It's so cool to watch them swim on the back of a ray. It's so cool to watch them, pop a mullet that's not paying attention to where it's at. It's so cool to watch them slurp in a shrimp. All these things that I've seen them do, on the water while fishing for them. Half the time, I feel like I just enjoy spending the time being out there, whether it's just sitting on the flats boat, sitting in the kayak, or standing in the kayak, just looking around at what's going on and watching the behavior of those fish. It's just cool just to see them act and how they move around in their environment. It's just like a big giant aquarium.
Yeah, that's super cool. And, kind of coming back to the guide game, what's a day on the water like with Chris Siess?
Oh, well, we would, I'd probably I try to reach out to my clients 2 days in advance to give them a heads up on what the weather's going to be like, what to expect and prepare for in that realm, and also give them a time as to when we're going to meet. If we're just doing a wade fishing trip, it's kind of, I'm flexible on the time of the days when they would like to go, unless something in particular is, fishing really well at a certain time of the day, which is slightly unusual. But if we're doing the bowfin game, or the fishing on the Chesapeake Bay, or fishing somewhere down around North Carolina or something like that, it's more than likely going to be a pick and choose the time based on the tides. I really like to chase fish depending on the tide, depending on the situation, but generally we are fishing the last 2 or 3 hours of an incoming and the top 2 or 3 hours of the falling in saltwater. And then I actually tend to fish a low tide for bowfin, and in some situations, redfish fishing a low tide. It all just depends on exactly where I'm at and what I'm doing. So it just, again, depends on what the tide's doing. And, of course, I try to work with my clients, their schedules, because everybody's, all over the place these days, and they might not be able to meet at a specific time. But we spend as much time as possibly can out on the water. It's at least 5 hours. Often that stretches into 6. And I try my best to get them on the fish as quick as possible and teach them something. So, I really want my clients to come away having felt like they learned something and had a really good time. And hopefully they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Obviously, COVID has kind of put the kibosh on most of the fly fishing show season. But, before I let you hop tonight, do you have any upcoming events? I don't know, maybe you're making more earrings somewhere that you want to share with our listeners that are going to come up maybe in January, February, March?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, COVID's really put a damper on the fly fishing shows, which I absolutely love going to those. I mean, I love talking to you there at those, and trading stories, making new friends, meeting new clients. I love the show. So it's a little discouraging, as with all things that COVID has caused, to not be able to do those. If the Atlanta one still goes on, which it's apparently still up in the air, I can't believe they still might have it, but he still might have it. I'll be down at that one. I don't have any other events coming up due to COVID. The event today was kind of a one-off thing that I got invited to, which was exciting, but just something kind of totally off the wall, and I did it, and I hope I get to do it again. One thing I do like to do is I do like to hop on my Instagram live for my fly fishing account there, Not the Real World. And I love tying and talking to friends and folks that I don't know, or people that I've just met over Instagram in the fly fishing community, and tie flies for people. That's probably my favorite part of the show is tying redfish flies, tying musky flies, tying bowfin streamers, whatever it might be. And luckily Instagram, the live version of that allows me to still do that and still have that interaction with people, where they can type me a message and ask me, about tying down the bucktail, like we talked about earlier, using the specific thread wrap technique, or why do I fish a certain redfish color on a redfish fly at a specific time or whatever, and why I'm tying the fly that way. So, you can always keep an eye out for that. I generally hop on those on random weekday evening about 8:00, and I'll tie for 2 hours. And I'm happy to give away most of my secrets on there. Not all of them, but most of them. And it's a fun way to teach people from afar when we can't do it because of this stupid pandemic. But it's just the world we live in here at the present time, unfortunately. So that's probably the only thing I can can promise at the moment is just doing the Instagram live things, and I need to post some more YouTube videos. So I'll get on that for your listeners here if they want to check out how to tie some of my flies. I'm not able to make the Instagram live events. I can show them how to do some stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful. And, just to kind of help everybody out, why don't you kind of walk through all the places that you live on the internet so people can follow your fishing adventures and maybe book a trip with you?
Okay, sure. I guess the most common one that I am on would be Not the Real World on Instagram. So that's the @ symbol, not with a K. So that's spelled KNOTTHEREELWORLD. Not the Real World. Play on words there. Which is the name of my guide business as well. And so it's just @ Not the Real World is my Instagram account. I'm probably on that the most. I answer the most questions on that. My website is www.nottherealworld.com. The earring game thing that I just came up with here, the earring business, is called Pretty Fly Designs, which Pretty Fly is the name of my flat boat. And that's Pretty Fly Designs _ on Instagram. But I'm on Not the Real World the most, and that's probably the easiest route to find me. I have not posted a YouTube video in months, so I need to get back on there as well. And I think you can search YouTube on how to find me on that as well, just through Not the Real World. But I'll have to double check that because I'm no YouTube expert. But Instagram or my website is probably the easiest way to find me.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll drop all those in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. I really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And Chris, I appreciate you taking a break from tying earrings at a ladies' dress shop to talk to me this evening.
I hope I'm the only person you have to say that to. It's crazy, but I'll take it. I made some money, so I'll take it.
Yeah, no. So I really appreciate you making the time to chat.
Sure. Marvin, I really appreciate you having me on. Thanks so much. And we got to get on the water sometime. And at the very least, we need to have another beer at the shows here sometime soon, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care and have a good evening.
All right. You too, Marvin. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, if you like the podcast, please tell a friend and please subscribe and leave us a review and rating in the podcatcher of your choice. And don't forget to check out the show notes for all the info on Blaine's upcoming tying class. Tight lines, everybody.